Hey everybody, I'm Brad Palumbo, and you're watching BradReacts on Right Now, where we react to and debunk the craziest and cringiest political content that's going viral on social media. Today we're taking a look at $15 minimum wage TikToks. Producer Zeke, let's get right into it.
You love me, I know you care.
I got a feeling.
Yes, our song is the slam of street doors.
50 and a union, 50 and a union, 50 and a union, 50 and a union, 50 and a union.
Why do they always have to ruin a good thing? I was getting a kick out of that video as a 90s kid. I mean, oh my god, there never needs to be another Fast and Furious movie ever again. What are we on? Fast and Furious 25? It's the same thing over and over again. I can't stand that. But also the Harry Potter throwback. I appreciate it. The Taylor Swift throwback, TBT, she did used to actually do country music, so I got a kick out of that. But the main point of this video, unfortunately guys, isn't just the laughs, but it's some misleading economic claims. They're right that the federal minimum wage hasn't increased in a long time, and it's at $7.25 an hour, but they're wrong to suggest that that means most people's wages haven't gone up. That hourly wage workers have still actually gotten a lot of wage increases despite the federal minimum wage on the books not changing. In South Carolina, for example, they don't have a state minimum wage, so they just use that $7.25 as the only minimum wage in the state, but only 5%, yes, 5% of hourly workers in South Carolina earn the federal minimum wage. So 95% earn much more. So it's just not true that that they don't get wage increases without increasing the minimum wage. And that's totally ignoring the even more glaring fact that many states and localities have increased their minimum wages on their own, and it hasn't worked out great. So this video, it misses the point, even though it's got some great references for 90s kids. Zeke, let's roll the next one.
Someone you think should make less than $15 an hour. I'll start.
I see what you did there, sis. That was cute, but it really was cute, but I'm happy to. I'm happy to explain to you who should earn less than $15 an hour, and that is simply anyone who produces less than $15 an hour in value for their employer. It's not because I'm mean, it's not because I don't want people to earn more, it's because you're moralizing about what should be isn't very relevant to economic reality. And the sad truth is that the real minimum wage is always zero. It's always unemployment. And so if you mandate a wage that's higher than what an employee can actually produce in value for their employer, they simply will not be employed at all. Because business is business. It's not charity. And you're not helping anybody by grandstanding about what people deserve. In fact, you're locking them out of a job entirely. Zeke, what do we got next?
Alarming statistic that your country doesn't care about.
The average minimum wage worker in the United States would have to work 79 hours a week to afford a one-bedroom. And it's simply because minimum wage workers are usually making $8, $9, $10, $11 an hour, when in reality, to afford to live, they need to be making well over $15.
Okay, I mean, honestly, sort of agree with you there, but you've got the problem entirely backwards. Housing is way too expensive in this country, but we have to talk about the fact that that's because literally in most cities in this country, it is illegal to build housing, right? The labyrinth of between rent control and zoning regulations, they have artificially restricted the supply of housing through so much government paperwork and bureaucracy that we have housing crises in these cities that make the rent just insanely high. But the solution to that is to address that and to fix that market so it can actually operate and provide people with affordable housing, which is literally illegal to do in many places in this country. It's not to force up the minimum wage to try to match that outrageous standard of living that big government incompetence created in the first place. Because the sad truth is that when you hike up the minimum wage, businesses often respond by not hiring people in the future, by cutting your hours. So for example, at places like Target, when they're hit with minimum wage hikes, they'll just reduce people's hours so their actual earnings go down. You're not helping people if you fail to think through the unintended consequences of your policy plans and proposals. Zeke, what do we got next?
can't raise the minimum wage, it'll force small businesses to go under and lay off workers. This is what capitalists say every time workers start pushing for a living wage. And for one, the research shows that this isn't true. But even if it was, that's still a terrible argument. Like, you're telling me the system is set up in a way so that if you pay everyone a living wage, all the small businesses will go under and only the mega corporations will survive? My response to that would be that it sounds like your whole system sucks. All this argument proves is that market competition forces capitalists to drive their workers' wages down in order to survive. If your argument is that people need to be paid starvation wages in order to maintain the current system, maybe it's time you consider that the current system is garbage.
Oh, this dude has it all backwards, let me tell you. I mean, for example, let's think about this. Big businesses versus small businesses, right? Do you know who supports the $15 minimum wage? Amazon. That's right. Jeff Bezos has literally lobbied to double the federal minimum wage because he knows that his massive corporation can afford it, but it will bankrupt their small business competitors, and it will put future competitors who are just starting out, stop them from ever challenging Amazon. So if Amazon is lobbying for your supposedly pro-labor overhaul, maybe it's not actually in the best interests of labor. Would you give that a thought? As far as small businesses being the problem, or they shouldn't exist if they can't pay high wages, what you're basically saying is that job opportunities that are mutually beneficial, right? Otherwise that employee would quit, that employer wouldn't hire them, shouldn't exist because they don't meet your standard of what wages ought to be, and you're not helping people by consigning them to $0 an hour because you think their job doesn't pay enough. The last point, which is actually the most fundamentally wrong thing that this gentleman had to say, is that market competition drives down wages. Any economist will tell you that's entirely backwards. When businesses have to compete for each other, we've seen this recently actually with the labor shortage, wages go up. Because there's plenty of jobs elsewhere. If my employer won't pay me more, they have to offer more to bid them away. When big government gets in the way, you have monopolies that are protected through crony regulations and laws, kind of like the $15 minimum wage, well then, these employers don't really have much competition, so you don't have a lot of options, so they can kind of pay you what you get and you've got to take it. So it is not true that market competition is the problem. The lack of it is what's really behind this issue. Zeke, what do we got next?
$15 an hour too much? Well, here is what billionaires have been making during the pandemic. I think these people could spare a few dollars off their multi-million-dollar per hour paychecks so that other people could afford to pay their rent. Come on, guys.
Oh, those kinds of videos make me cringe. One, they always use these fluctuations in stock wealth to show these outrageous numbers of how much money rich people are making, but they never do it when the stock, dips back down and say, look how much they just lost in an hour. It's a one-way kind of thing, but that's not even the point here, right? They're saying like, oh, well, these big companies can afford to pay their workers more. First off, that doesn't address the fact that a minimum wage affects all sorts of companies, not just ones owned by billionaires. It affects restaurants that operate on tiny operating margins that would be pushed under the brink. It affects mom and pops. But even at these big corporations, we would all like to think that the minimum wage would just mean, less greed and more prosperity for workers. But look at McDonald's, for example. An extensive economic study found that they basically passed on all the costs of minimum wage hikes in terms of higher consumer prices on their menu, right? The cost of a Big Mac goes up by 20 cents or whatever it be. They pass that cost on entirely to consumers. So when you say that your plan's going to help people by raising their wages to raise their standard of living, and you just ignore the unintended consequence, the glaringly painful reality that that's just going to end up coming out of their wallet on the other side, you're not helping anybody. You're just pushing progressive propaganda to make yourself feel better. All right, Zeke, that's about all the economic illiteracy and minimum wage cringe I can handle for today. So thank you guys for joining us on BradReacts on Right Now. Be sure to hit that like button. I want to get to 250 likes. I'm setting a goal right now. And let me know what you think in the comment section below. I do read the comments. So if you tell me that my hair looks dashing today or not good, I will have to read it and either smile or weep. Hit that subscribe button so you can join us next time on BradReacts.